Namaste. This is Yoga Therapy Podcast, and I'm your host, Shira Cohen, yoga teacher, yoga therapist, and Ayurvedic wellness educator. In these conversations with experts in the field of yoga therapy, you'll find out what it is and how it can help you and your loved ones to reclaim well-being. We'll touch on physical as well as mental health, physiology, emotions, women's health, spiritual well-being, goddesses, and self-development in the fullest sense. Listening to another's story can change ours, so thank you for showing up, and let's begin this journey together. All right, everyone. So today we are joined by Jessica Hirani, and she's in London, so I'm very happy to be speaking to a neighbor. Thank you, Jessica, for being here.
No worries. Thank you so much for having me, Shira.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure. So Jessica is a wellness therapist, she calls herself, because in England there is not enough awareness about what yoga therapy is, which is a similar situation to here. So she is a certified yoga teacher, therapist, and a secondary education teacher. She specializes in burnout, mental health, long COVID, fibromyalgia, and chronic fatigue, which she does at the Royal London Hospital for Integrative Health. So tell us, Jessica, about your story of yoga and how did it become yoga therapy?
Okay. Well, I've always loved yoga. I first was introduced to yoga through a gym class called Bodybalance, which was a little bit of yoga, Pilates, and Tai Chi. And I remember at the end of that session feeling so at peace with myself, like my mind was so quiet and I was so still, yet my body was so energized. And I loved that feeling. I became quite addicted to that feeling. A couple of years ago, I had a burnout myself. I had loads of personal circumstances and loads of tragic endings in a year. Quite a traumatic grief that I experienced, really hard and sharp endings that I wasn't expecting. And it felt very overwhelming, and I couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle it mentally, and my body couldn't handle it. And my mental health was really compromised, and I was really struggling in all aspects. And I struggled with sleep, I struggled with food, I struggled with concentration. So all the symptoms of stress, anxiety, and PTSD were very prevalent. And I remember going to see my GP, and I was on my knees. I really just didn't know how to help myself, and I wanted some support. And it was quite a cold interaction with the GP, and I remember leaving there with a concoction of pills, or a prescription of pills, and that was the only thing that they could recommend me. And I left that room feeling really enraged, really angry at the system, the health system, but also as at my circumstance. How have I ended up here? How? Why me? And how did I end up here? I was never like this, and nor do I want to continue this journey like this of medicating in a way and not treating the core root. And that was coming up for me very strongly. And from that point onwards, I made a pledge to myself that I was going to not be here again. And it meant looking at the core root of where all of this is stemming from. I decided to get off the sofa where I was in a real slump every day, sat on the sofa, not moving, and decided to try a yoga class thereafter. And it really supported me in terms of my sleep. Because where I wasn't sleeping, I just wasn't functioning on a daily basis. the fear was getting so overwhelming that I was now feeling fear about sleeping, like looking at my bed every night, thinking that I'm not going to go to sleep and I have to, and how is that going to be possible? So this vicious cycle, yoga found me. I really believe that yoga found me, and I started to go to a class on a regular basis, where thereafter I felt very relaxed, not in my head anymore, and I was having a break from these intrusive thoughts that I was continuously having about my life and my circumstance, that was depleting my energy. So that was yoga. I started that journey. Thereafter, I started developing my self-awareness, really. I started to have flashbacks and realizations of how I had come to this situation in my life. I started then seeking other support, like other therapy, a talking therapist. I also went to see somebody about my gut health, an Ayurvedic practitioner, and started looking at my diet. So very slowly, I started to make lifestyle changes that was in alignment with the yogic, tradition and outlook. My whole outlook started to shift, and for the better. And I am who I am now because of all of that. And really believe in the alchemy of yoga. And thereafter, I trained as a teacher. I went to India. I trained as a teacher. I did my 2-hour training. And then something still felt like a void, like I want to do this and I really want to study and specialize in the field of mental health. So I decided to start in 2018 to start my yoga therapy journey. And here I am as a yoga therapist, helping others, out into their body, integrating different aspects of themselves. And it's been a really transformative journey for me. Yes.
Thank you, Jessica, for that brave story and for the hardships. I know what a burnout's like. I've had two, and you can feel very at the end of a tunnel and you have no idea how to get out. So it's good that you have turned it around. And I think that's what everyone I've talked to, clients, students who've had burnout, it's been their biggest turning point as well. It's the same as what you said. All of a sudden you start to look at, how did I get here? What were the patterns and the limiting beliefs that I have that have gotten me to this place?
Yes. Yeah. And for me, it was really, it was the most painful part of my life so far.
Yeah, I've had the same.
Yeah, but from that, I birthed a new beginning in terms of, it was my spiritual awakening. I really woke up to things that I wasn't seeing and learning so much more about myself and about my true self, coming home to myself. And that is what yoga is, right? Yoga is coming home to yourself. That is the philosophy of yoga. And I really went through that whole journey. And I have no regrets now, although it was really difficult. I wish I had the right support and the right people to speak to, because I held a lot of shame. I held a lot of shame about my mental health, and I bottled it up. I swallowed it down. And culturally, it's not acknowledged in the Indian culture where I'm from. I felt a lot of shame talking about it or telling people that I'm suffering in my mind and can you help me? Just those words of can you help me felt like I'm burdening others.
You're a failure. That's basically the message you get from people.
Yeah.
But I love something you said when you were talking about your journey, when you were at that GP and he gave you the medicine and you were angry, and that anger was what actually transformed your journey from, okay, I'm going to be this victim and just take these pills and sit on the sofa, to actually making a change and having a look, how can I proactively change this? And that's what I love about emotions, is they are motivators for change.
Yes.
Do not emote and follow that feeling, there will be no change, or you will have the shame and depression eventually, or anxiety, because you are not taking the actions that those emotions are asking you to take.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
for me, it was like, I need to get back in the driver's seat. It was like, my mind seems to be running the show here. Where am I? And I need to get back into the driver's seats. And that I was taking action towards that thereafter. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Oh wow. So how did that shift then from there? Was it a long process? Was it a slow process? Or did you see that yoga was helping quite quickly?
I saw the instant gratification from yoga in terms of calming my nervous system. When I mean I was highly anxious,
Mm-hmm.
my nervous system was dysregulated all the time, and by dysregulation, I mean I'm in an active, like I'm in flight, or freeze continuously. And I know that because my heart was racing and I was continuously in the toilet. And I just, and I couldn't sleep. I was like very hyper vigilant and continuously looking over my back, thinking now, something's bad is going to happen to me. I'm going to be next, you know, something really bad is going to happen. And that dread, that feeling
Yeah.
of dread.
Yeah.
And when I was starting to have these realizations, and when I mean realizations, I would be on the mat, and sometimes I would be wanting to cry towards the end of the class, or being in shavasana, and huge waves of emotion coming in around my heart center, because I really felt like my heart was broken, and my heart was suffering a lot. And then I started to read and inquire about the chakra system and yoga philosophy and what is meditation. And I would say when I started to access, when my nervous system was a lot more calmer and I started to access meditation, and I was now part of a community practicing Raj Yoga meditation, that really supported my well-being. That really supported my everything. And I started to see a difference, a massive difference in my outlook. And as soon as I could access sleep and eat better, then I was doing much more better self. And obviously, the talking therapy of having somebody there impartial to offload my thoughts and feelings with, and explore my feelings. I have to say, I found myself to have very little emotional literacy around this huge feeling in my body, this huge overwhelm in my nervous system, but not being able to label it of what it was, and that was down to my trauma, because now I understand, as a part of our brain becomes offline, where we can't seem to verbalize our feelings. And I remember in the therapy room, she was asking me questions, my therapist, and I was like, feeling a lot in my body, but not being able to open my mouth and express it.
Wow.
And that I felt like was hurting me even more, because I felt like it was just there.
Yeah, and it was compounding you. And because if you think about it, you feel and then you emote. So there's the input and the output. And if we're not emoting, it just builds up and stays within us. And like you said, you're right. There is so little emotional literacy that is missing in most cultures.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. What a journey. Yeah.
Yes.
So how do you use yoga therapy to help these situations in people? Because I've discovered that most Western medicine does just dish out drugs. I've had a lot of burnout clients come, and they are young, they are 25, some of these, especially women, it's mainly women, who have been diagnosed as depressed when actually it's just chronic adrenal insufficiency due to chronic burnout, basically. And yeah, so they're not getting the treatment they actually need, and they're not getting to the core. So what for you helped you get to the core? What for you was the missing links? I would say not just one, but there are plusieurs, many links.
Yes.
To be addressed when we're looking at a person who is a psychosocial, biological being.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. You know, in yoga therapy, we're trained to use the kosha model, the Panchamaya kosha, which are 5 aspects of the self. And I would have to say that was been my journey, and that's what I use with people in terms of understanding the whole person, meeting the whole person, and not seeing them as broken or at fault. But obviously, there's some things that just need to be rebalanced again. We need to rebalance and come back to balance with ourselves. And you know, that level of holistic questioning of asking people again, what are their beliefs? What are your values? What do you value the most? And do you still feel that way? Are you working towards that? Or have you been so far removed from your values that you don't know who you are anymore? And the journey of yoga and the kosha model is coming back to wellness, coming back to yourself, coming back to the heart, coming back to who you are, our innate spirit, wisdom, and listening to your intuition. You know, so much of what we suppress is then just keeps surfacing in different ways. What you're not seeing or not treating is going to show up in so many different ways in your relationships, in your feelings, in your anger and rage. And so I really speak to my clients in terms of identifying patterns here. Let's identify patterns. And where are those patterns? Are you feeling it in your body also? Where are you feeling it in your breath? What is your breath pattern? What is the mental pattern? What are your habits? You know, are they serving you? How can we create better habits? In dialogue with my client, I am, you know, and with an open mind and open perspective that we are all able to change. Change is possible, you know, change is massively possible. And what change would you like to make for your health and well-being? What is causing your unhappiness? And let's go to, when they're ready, let's go to that root cause a little bit of what is that unhappiness for you? And, you know, are you spending so much time in your mind that you forget that you're inhabiting a body? And are we fully inhabiting our body here? Are we fully inhabiting our body? That means, are we in tune with our hormones? And for women, are we in tune with our cycles? Are we respecting our cycles? Are we honoring our body? Are we feeding ourselves well? Are we sleeping well? And a lot, you know, there's a huge rest revolution at the moment of deep rest, of people taking a break. And it's very much needed, especially in the city life where everyone is
go,
running 100 miles per hour on this treadmill and burning themselves out. And they feel that sleep, if they sleep more on the weekend, they'll just catch up on their sleep and they'll be okay. No, that is not the answer. That is not deep rest.
Listen to Jessica. She knows what she's talking about.
You know, we need to mentally switch off. And for me, yoga really gave me that access. It is the practice of deep rest for me. And this is what I want to be able to teach others, to attune to your body, to attune to your breath and your heart. And when everything is in alignment, this is when your true self comes forward, arises, whether that be your intuition, your sixth sense, your spirit, your soul, and listen. It's there. It's talking to you. It's guiding you. Let it guide you. Trust in yourself again.
Thank you for that. Are people receptive when you speak like this? I mean, you're really speaking from your heart, and this is for you a very deep experience, and it's quite recent, so it's still very strong urge to get people to realize how important this is. Are they open to it when you speak to them in this way, or do you approach it according to the person in front of you? Obviously.
Yes, the client-centered approach is very much of where's the client right now in this moment, and meet them where they are. And I find that really important, that I don't project my views and project my things on them and advise them on what they should do, but let the answer come from them. And this is the therapy work, It's not about me. It is not me talking. It's you talking. And I think everyone is needing a space to really express themselves, to express their feelings and to express their truth. And when I'm speaking to my clients and I'm fully present for them and I'm listening, that seems to be enough. That's more than enough. And then over time, when they're ready to open up, then we'll look at another aspect, But there is no forcing, there's no fixing in this type of therapy. We're going at your pace. We're going where you are ready to go today.
Yeah.
And that's really important. That's really, really important that they are guiding me. They are guiding me. They are in control.
What the pace is. Yes. Yeah. And it's a collaborative process. We do it together, we communicate, feel, try things out.
And I really do feel that they feel the empathy for somebody who's been through a hard challenge, and they can speak openly about their challenges and not feel like an alien, not feel like they're the only person in the world feeling this way, because it can feel that way. You feel isolated and alone with mental health. It keeps you very little, and your perspective becomes very narrow. You see tunnel vision. And therapy, has so many benefits in terms of you're not seeing your blind spots. And as a therapist, let's call that out gently with kindness. Let's call out those patterns. Let's call out those blind spots so that the client can see a wider perspective, see things differently, approach things differently. Let's interrupt these poor habits. Let's try something else. Let's do that. That's part of our growth and evolution. Yeah.
Lovely. So how do you work with people? For example, you have a lot of people with chronic issues. What do you think is the underlying, apart from obviously habits and patterns, beliefs, what causes the body to stay in that chronic pattern of disease, basically, and disorganization of tissue cells? What do you think is behind all that?
That's a really great, juicy question, Shira.
Yes.
I love that question. Is generational trauma, undealt with trauma, and it's hard to talk about, I think, if I'm just exploring it for myself right now.
Of course, because again, there's that issue of shame involved. So I'll just, for readers, listeners, there's a book that I'm just reading now from Gabor Maté, When the Body Says No. And so I've been writing a book or researching the last 4 years for my book. And he's saying a lot of the things that I discovered through research on published medical articles. So all evidence-based, because this is another thing of Jessica's work. It's all evidence-based therapy. And so stress obviously is the underlying cause of all these chronic conditions, and stress can be either from external, but it's also internal when we're talking about trauma and anything that is happening within the body that we cannot express, like you were talking about, feeling that your heart was just stuck and full of all these things that couldn't come out through your mouth and your throat. This is internal stress. It causes physiological stress and therefore triggers the nervous system, the endocrine system, the immune system, and the psychological nervous system.
Yeah.
And also we have these two stresses coming from outside and inside, and that's why we feel that we're stuck and we can't move through, and we don't even see, like you were saying in the beginning, that you just couldn't even get a grip mentally and emotionally. You just feel that every aspect of your life is falling apart.
Yeah. And everything just seems so triggering. Nothing seems to soothe the nervous system, but everything seems so heightened at all times. And one thing I learned recently is we've brought the stress, and it's hard. It's become a hard wiring because we've learned it as a coping mechanism. So wherever we have felt stressed, there's a certain coping mechanism we've learned. And now that seems to be recorded in our body and our nervous system. So untangling that,
a long time.
untangling that is possible. Yes, we need to learn. We need to possibly go back to that place where we first learned this coping mechanism, and understanding that it's not the healthiest way, and now adopt and learn some healthier approaches. And working with our nervous system, really gently creating in a safe environment, and exploring other things, other tools that can help build back that autonomic resiliency again in the nervous system, so that we have a way of handling stress. We have another way, there's not that default way that I keep going to. The default is not helping.
Yeah, and we have a lot of tools that we can use, and what you're talking about, we're talking about now bottoms up regulation. And what you were speaking about before is speaking to a therapist, a talk therapist, is the top down. And if you use both, this way you are gathering all the tools you have and seeing from top down and bottom up how you can bring back that balance. And most important, like to start with, is that neural balance, because the nerves obviously affect the psyche, and then the emotions and the hormones and the physiology of immunity, which can aggravate or again bring balance. Ending.
Yes, and that's the cutting edge science that is now available for us in terms of how yoga is impacting the brain and the neuroscience behind it. It's amazing how much research now has been done to our yogic breathing, our yoga psychology of certain postures even. And fine movement, fine motor control movement, and changing the different sequences and how that impacts and strengthens the mind-body relationship is really important here. Yes. And some people think that it's a very woo practice, and I hate using that word because it's not woo. Nothing is woo unless you are willing to experience it yourself. You're stuck in a rut and you're doing the same thing day in, day out. Why don't you just break the rut and try something different? Try yoga. You have nothing to lose. Nothing. And when these limited bits around And misconceptions, huge misconceptions come up time and time again around yoga. I'm not flexible, I'm not fit enough. Oh, I can't do yoga. It's too slow. It's boring. It puts me to sleep. And like, that's clearly why you need yoga in your life. Because you've got conceptions and you haven't even tried it. You just one class and gave up.
Yeah, even I think, that's one reason I'm kind of happy. We were talking with Leslie about why to call it, why he calls himself a yoga educator and not a yoga therapist, and that he sees a therapist as trying to do this job of fixing the person.
Yeah.
And which is true, you cannot fix anyone. But at the same time, that it's so important to find out ways that you can affect change in a healthy, self-regulating, self-agent steps, and that yoga is not touching your toes. There is so much more to yoga, and that's the reason I'm kind of happy that there is this distinction of what yoga therapy is. But now people still don't know what yoga therapy is because they don't even know what yoga is. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a whole podcast on its own, that topic,
Well, a few even.
Yeah, but like it's interesting why people don't want to try, and where does those beliefs and misconceptions stem from? Social media?
No, I think fear. Fear. People are just afraid of the unknown.
Yes.
Anyway, always. Fear of hurting themselves, fear of being in some religious thing, because some people think yoga's a religious thing.
Yeah.
Fear of only being between women who can touch their toes,
Yes.
or doing strange breathing exercises. I don't know. There's a lot of fear, I think.
There's fear, and I think as well, I'm just going to say, they are so maybe addicted. Well, no, addicted is not the right word, shall I say. They are so deeply ingrained with who they are, even though they're not happy with who they are or their lifestyle choices, and yet maybe hardwiring, they just don't know how to crack out of it. They don't know to broaden their mindscape or to try something different, or they're actually afraid of who they're going to meet on the other side of yoga, the other side of shavasana. When you wake up, who are you going to meet? Who are you going to be? I think that's the fear as well, that they're going to see parts of themselves that they don't know how to deal with. And actually, that's why we hold the space as therapists, because we've gone through that transformation ourselves. And
I just want to touch on, because Jessica and me were talking, I just asked Jessica about if she'd been to India before, because she's born and bred in England, and she was telling about her transformation thanks to India. And it's a scary moment, because you all of a sudden comprehend these things about yourself that you couldn't have seen before that time.
Yes, the sensory overload, and the who am I question. Who am I? Came up for me as I was 25, an adult, and coming, traveling India for the first time as an adult. And I was like, oh my God, who am I? Who am I? I don't fit in here. Who am I? And I had to go through that whole journey of asking myself, who am I? and that was in a spiritual context, actually. It's quite funny. But then it brought me to a spiritual grounding with myself, and a real grounding and appreciation for who I am and where I'm from, and my culture, my parents' background. I went to the village and saw the house that they lived in, and a real acceptance of who I am. So when you ask the question, who am I, when you've become lost, the journey is of accepting who you are. And that's part of it.
And maybe you don't find anything at that moment. That's also okay, and you were saying before that people can be frightened of meeting who they are at the end of their experience of yoga, or even somewhere in that class, or later in the week or in the month or in the year. But not knowing for a while and living with ambivalence is better than continuing on a path that you doesn't serve you anymore,
Yeah.
it causes stress and suffering and struggle, or just a dead crap life.
Yeah.
That's another option.
Yeah, and in actual fact, it's coming about in your life because it's wanting you to change.
You're
It's
unconscious, yes.
yeah, it's really forcing you, not forcing you, sorry. It's really wanting you to have a really good look at things. Just please look at things, and you don't have to do it alone. And just dissect it little by little for whatever you're ready for. But it's come about for a reason, and you can't ignore that. You can't ignore the pothole in the road and keep driving over it. It's there, it
Pretending
exists.
it's not there.
Yeah, it really does exist, and you need the right support from the right people to be able to address it and look at that. And that's why we have so many different people. We have coaches, we've got psychotherapists, we've got so many different modalities now. We're living in quite a rich therapy
Therapy.
culture.
Yes.
You know,
Yes. And I
there's
think,
something for everyone.
yes, yeah, exactly. I think the wonderful thing about yoga therapy is that we use the body, and therefore we can we can heal trauma and PTSD without actually having to repeat and trigger the memories of it in the mind, because you're using the somatic channels,
Yes.
releasing it before actually being conscious of why and how you're releasing what.
Yeah, isn't that so powerful that
Yeah,
we don't need to think our way out of issues and
yeah.
problems and traumas. We just need to be able to move our body
Consciously.
consciously,
Yes.
be very conscious and be awake in our body and awake in ourselves. And that has been my recent training. I'm training in
Oh,
somatics in chronic fatigue and stress.
excellent.
Yes.
Where? In London?
In London, yes.
Yeah.
I'm training here. I'm just doing a little short course, and it would be interesting to share that with my chronic fatigue patients actually, and
Definitely.
see how they get along with just these really fine small movements and small and yes, holding small movements and see what arises from that. Just moving
Very
really slowly and
powerful.
mindfully. Yeah, it is very powerful. Yes.
Who's doing the training? I'm curious of the somatic.
Sure. I'm training with Charlotte Watts and Leah Barnett.
Charlotte Watts and Leah Barnett.
Yeah, Leah Barnett. And it's with the yoga campus.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Yes, I did a somatics training years back, before it was trendy. And yeah, it was just such simple movements, but so effective. And I just did it today with the old ladies in the community center. And it was so wonderful to see how quickly we did, I think, maximum 10 minutes of it, but they just went from this high energy into this very relaxed, deep, calm, regulated state, and very clear. Like usually they're quite spaced in their minds. They're so effective.
Yes, amazing. Like, the body is such a beautiful universe here that we have, and really that appreciation for it. Yes. And to balance it out and not to be stuck in your mind in rumination. That's the key thing that I found with yoga, my personal experience. And this is what I find from my client feedback as well with my patients and my private clients, that I have had feedback recently from one client said, I feel awake, I feel alive. She said to me, I feel at the end of our therapy session, I feel alive. And I said, wow,
Amazing. Yeah. What a gift.
yes.
Yeah. How often do people say that?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's the alchemy of yoga. Yes.
Exactly. Oh, thank you, Jessica. Is there anything you still want to touch on? Something you want to share with us? Something.
Yeah, I just wanted to share, as a wellness therapist, what I offer, my offerings, and if it calls to anybody, they can get in touch. I'm working with clients in UK and Europe online at the moment,
Mhm.
and I'm offering workshops. Um, I offer workshops and I offer courses. Currently, I'm running an 8-week evidence-based course for the mind. It's a yoga therapy course. We've just started, and I will be maybe opening a sort of new intake for the next course as it runs. And I really think, in terms of mental health and services being inundated at the moment, I really do think this is a really beautiful course. We use yoga therapy and we use mindfulness-based stress reduction meditations,
Mm-hmm.
and it's an 8-week journey where I support you, and we meet once a week online. And it's a 2 hours of a practice, which we spend a lot of time doing pranayama as well, breath work,
Mm-hmm.
I feel that doesn't get enough credit in yoga, normal yoga classes, stream classes. And it is very powerful, very
Yes.
powerful.
Yes.
Yes. And so there's it's a group therapy because, at the end of our practice, we close with a group circle where everyone gets an opportunity to express their truth, express their insights and experience of their practice on the day.
Mm.
And I find, with yoga, because it's that physical aspect, you have to be present. It is the practice of present moment awareness. What are you doing with your right leg and your right arm? How are you breathing? How are you holding your energy and sustaining your energy? I mean, it has loads of fruits. It has loads of benefits, and I have written a blog about the benefits, and if it's possible, I'm going to share the course details and the blog details of, the course details, the blog details with you, so you're able to add it to the notes and people
Yes.
can read about
Yeah.
it in their own
I'll
time.
put it in the links
Yeah,
links
sure.
in the show notes. Yeah, that's the best way.
Yeah, sure. And we really work well with like different mindfulness themes like finding space, grounding, and essentially the yoga therapy course is teaching self-regulation tools. And we all need that,
Yeah.
and you don't need to be going through a burnout. You don't need to be going through a challenge right now in the moment of doing the therapy
No,
course.
you can prevent all these things by learning to self-regulate.
Absolutely. Such a preventative course. And
Mm.
especially when you know you're a sensitive being and you know that you go stress response very quickly and you just want to know how to handle yourself and on building that autonomic resiliency, it can really help. I've actually got, I've actually got two women who are menopausal, and yeah, it is impacting their mental health a lot.
Of
So
course.
we come from different backgrounds, we come from different health backgrounds and we're going through different phases in our life, but all is welcome, all is welcome. So if it calls to you, do get in touch. And yeah, thank you so much for your time, Shira.
Yeah, my pleasure. Wonderful getting to know you. And I'm glad you mentioned that about perimenopause because I'm also going through it since a few years. And I didn't know I was going through it the first year. And I was like, what is happening? The brain fog, the emotions. And there's just way too little information out there. And
Mm.
women should be talking about this much more casually because it's important to know what the hell's going on because it can last for 12 years basically.
Wow.
Yeah, it's the change, the change before you're in menopause. Menopause just means you're like the men now. You don't have the swings. And then you finally can glide through life.
We wish.
It out. But we've got 12 years before that. And that is the hard part. And I've got a woman, she's 64, and she said her hot flushes have just finally ended. You know, so she's been having hot flushes for 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's not something I'm looking forward to at all.
It doesn't have to be that long, I think. You know, I think if I'd known before, and that is why I started studying and researching hormones and physiology, because burnout plus perimenopause is a mess. Yes. It's a cocktail of chemicals that you just can't handle. It's explosive and depressing and everything in between. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you can just imagine. But knowing how to self-regulate is such a powerful tool and can prevent a lot of misery.
Yes. And you know, with these courses as well, we should never stop learning about ourselves, you know, and when we're in a different dynamic, when we're in a different place where we've not tried this kind of thing before, we're really challenging ourselves out of our comfort zone, we can really, really learn more about ourselves. And I don't mean in a negative way, like learn about your issues. No, not at all. Learn about your greatness, your strengths, your superpowers.
Yeah.
You know, it's empowering to know that you're more than capable. Sometimes we need that reminder, and sometimes we need to push ourselves out of the comfort zone to do something completely different that we haven't tried, to experience that for ourselves again and remind ourselves, oh my God, I held myself really well. I spoke about that really well. And that's been my recent experience. And I really wanted to share that because, you know, you may not know about yoga, you may hate yoga, you may love yoga. There's so many different spectrums, but it's not just yoga. It's when people are limited. Hey, you're back. Sorry.
That's okay. You were getting so excited.
And the internet went while I was getting excited and I don't know where I was.
Yeah, but
anyway.
But you're right. We should be also patting ourselves on the shoulder and celebrating. You know, today I was doing it with these old women again. I was like, okay, now a lot of them have balance issues. So we were standing on one foot, and even if they were wobbling or falling, say well done and give yourself a loving hug, you know, because that's going to keep you sustained. That's going to nourish you for the next step. And again, coming into that discomfort of a zone and growth area that is new to you.
Yeah. And, you know, one thing my client said, and she said, you know, I need a cheerleader. And she said, you are that cheerleader for me, you know, and I want to tap in with you on a regular so that I get that again. Because, you know, like we said, our lives are fast paced. And as mothers, caregivers, we're constantly giving and we forget about ourselves. We really forget about our beautiful qualities and believing in ourselves. Why should that ever stop? Never. And I think it's so important to have that cheerleader role model or somebody modeling that to you, somebody who really listens and who really then mirrors back that beauty and your true essence to you. And I think that's really powerful. Yes.
Let's end there.
Yes. on a high.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, we'll say goodbye to the listeners and thank you for being here, Jessica. It was really wonderful getting to know you and love to see your enthusiasm and all the journey you've been through.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for doing what you do in terms of promoting yoga therapy and all the amazing practitioners out there worldwide doing what they're doing with the power of yoga. And long may that continue. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you to all the listeners for listening.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And thank you, listeners, for staying to the end. Goodbye and have a lovely week or weekend. Let's end here. So thank you everyone for staying to the end of the podcast. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. I really love doing these talks with these amazing people. And if you want to know more, just take a look in the show notes. There's plenty of links and ways to connect with either the guest or myself. If you want to work with us or find out more about us, just check out the information in the show notes. So I hope you have a wonderful weekend or week, and you'll be hearing from me next week. Bye.